At exactly 7:14 a.m., his phone started ringing. It was a call he had prayed for, the opportunity that could change his family's life forever. He opened one eye, looked at the screen, and whispered, "I'll call them back in 30 minutes." Then he rolled over and went back to sleep. When he finally woke up, the opportunity was gone. But what destroyed him wasn't losing the job. It was discovering who got it instead. If you've ever said, "I'll do it tomorrow," this story might change your life forever. Everyone in the neighborhood knew Tunde as the guy with big dreams. He wanted to own businesses. He wanted to build a mansion for his mother. He wanted to travel the world. He wanted to become rich before turning 30. There was only one problem. Tunde loved success, but he hated discipline. Every January, he bought new notebooks. Every Monday, he created a fresh timetable. Every night, he watched motivational videos until 2 a.m. Yet every morning, he hit the snooze button. He always had an excuse. "I'll start next week. I'm not in the mood. One more episode. 5 more minutes." Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Years quietly slipped away while his dreams stayed exactly where they started, in his imagination. His childhood friend, Emeka, wasn't smarter. He wasn't richer. He didn't have better connections. But every single day, while Tunde was sleeping, Emeka was already working. When Tunde was making excuses, Emeka was improving. When Tunde was waiting for motivation, Emeka relied on discipline. At first, nobody noticed a difference. Then life started keeping score. The following Monday, Tunde woke up with a burst of motivation. He sat up in bed, stretched his arms, and smiled. "Today is different," he told himself. He picked up the notebook he had bought the previous week. Across the first page, he had written in bold letters, "My new life starts today." He spent nearly 2 hours designing the perfect timetable. 5 a.m., wake up. 5:30 a.m., exercise. 6 a.m., read. 7 a.m., learn a high-income skill. 9 a.m., job applications. Everything looked beautiful on paper. Then he looked at the clock. It was already 9:42 a.m. He laughed. "I'll start properly tomorrow." He closed the notebook. Tomorrow had won again. Across town, Emeka's day had already been productive. By 6 a.m., he had jogged around the neighborhood. By 7 a.m., he had completed an online course. By 8:30 a.m., he had already sent applications to 5 companies. Nobody applauded him. Nobody even noticed. Success was growing quietly. Weeks passed. Whenever friends gathered in the evening, Tunde always spoke like a millionaire waiting to happen. "I've got ideas. I just need one opportunity. When I finally start, everybody will be shocked." His friends nodded politely. They had heard the same speech for 3 years. Meanwhile, Emeka rarely talked. He simply worked. One afternoon, an elderly man entered the small cyber cafe where Tunde spent most of his afternoons scrolling through social media. The man asked, "Who here knows graphic design?" Tunde quickly stood. "I do." The truth was, he had watched dozens of tutorials. He had downloaded expensive software. He had planned to learn, but he had never practiced. The old man smiled. "My company needs someone urgently. It's a 6-month contract." Tunde's heartbeat raced. This was it, his breakthrough. The man opened his laptop. "Can you design a simple flyer for me now?" Tunde froze. His fingers refused to move. Every button on the software suddenly looked unfamiliar. After several awkward minutes, he forced a smile. "My laptop has been acting up recently." The old man looked disappointed. "I understand." He packed his things and walked away. As he reached the door, Emeka entered the cafe to print some documents. The old man stopped him. "You look familiar. Do you know graphic design?" Emeka nodded. "Yes, sir. Can you spare 10 minutes?" "Of course." 10 minutes later, the old man shook Emeka's hand. "Report to my office on Monday." Tunde watched silently. His chest felt heavy. He had lost another opportunity. Not because someone was better, because someone had prepared. That evening, Tunde couldn't sleep. He replayed the moment again and again. "If only I had practiced. If only I had started. If only," the words echoed in the darkness. For the first time, He wondered if his biggest enemy wasn't poverty. Maybe it was procrastination. Months rolled by. Emeka's confidence grew. His clothes became neater. He bought a second-hand car. His mother stopped worrying about rent. Life wasn't perfect, but it was improving, steadily. Tunde, however, stayed exactly where it had always been. Every achievement of Emeka felt like a reminder of what he could have become. Instead of changing, he found excuses. He's just lucky. He knows people. God is favorites. Deep down, he knew he was lying to himself. One rainy evening, Tunde's mother called him into her room. She held a folded hospital bill in trembling hands. "My son, the doctor says I need surgery." Tunde forced a smile. "Don't worry, Mama. I'll handle it." But when he stepped outside, his confidence disappeared. His bank account could barely cover transport fare. He called friends. Nothing. He visited relatives. Nothing. He searched desperately for jobs. Most required skills he had promised himself he would learn someday. The same someday that never came. As he walked home in the rain, soaked and exhausted, he realized something terrifying. Laziness wasn't just stealing his dreams anymore. It was beginning to steal the people he loved. That night, for the first time in years, Tunde cried. Not because life was unfair, but because he finally understood that every "I'll do it tomorrow" had quietly built a prison he was now trapped inside. And before dawn broke, another phone call arrived, one that would force Tunde to make the hardest decision of his life. The phone kept vibrating on the small wooden table. Tunde stared at it through swollen eyes. His mother's hospital bill was still lying beside him, the figures on the paper looking larger than they had the night before. He picked up the phone. "Hello, Tunde," a familiar voice asked. It was his former lecturer, Mr. Adeyemi. "I've been trying to reach you." "Good morning, sir. I remembered you because one of my former students recommended someone for a project, but that person is no longer available. It's a 3-month contract with a construction company. They need someone to organize documents and manage digital records." Tunde sat upright. "Really, sir?" "Yes. The pay is enough to cover your immediate needs." His heart pounded. This was the miracle he had been praying for. But the lecture continued. "You'll need to report today, by 10 a.m. They need someone immediately." Tunde glanced at the clock. 8:07 a.m. The office was nearly 2 hours away. "I'll be there, sir." "Don't be late." "I won't." The call ended. For the first time in weeks, hope filled the tiny apartment. He rushed to the bathroom. Then he remembered his only clean shirt was still wet from yesterday's rain. No problem. He ironed another one. The electricity went off. He sighed. "It's okay." He looked for another shirt. Wrinkled. He decided to iron it later when the power returned. He sat down. Maybe they'll restore the light in 5 minutes. 5 minutes became 20. 20 became 40. Then he remembered he hadn't eaten. "I can't go there hungry." He walked to a nearby food stall. The woman preparing breakfast was overwhelmed with customers. "I'll just wait." Another 25 minutes disappeared. When he finally returned home, the electricity was back. He ironed his clothes carefully, checked himself in the mirror, adjusted his collar. He wanted to look perfect. By the time he entered a commercial bus, it was already 9:38 a.m. Traffic stood still. Every minute felt like an hour. He kept checking his phone. 9:55, 10:08, 10:17. Sweat rolled down his forehead. "Please move." The bus barely crawled forward. At exactly 10:41 a.m., he ran into the company's reception, breathing heavily. The receptionist looked up. "You must be Tunde." "Yes." "I'm so sorry," she hesitated. "They couldn't wait." His stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "The position has been filled." The words hit harder than a slap. He stood there speechless. "Someone arrived at 9:20, she continued gently. "They've already signed the contract." Everything around him became blurry. He slowly walked outside and sat on the curb. Cars passed. People laughed. Life continued. But inside him, something broke. For once, he couldn't blame traffic. He couldn't blame electricity. He couldn't blame bad luck. If he had prepared his clothes the previous night, if he had left home earlier, If he had treated the opportunity like it mattered, he would have been inside that office. Instead, he was outside, empty-handed. That evening, he returned to the hospital. His mother smiled despite the pain. Did everything go well? Tunde forced himself to smile. It will. She held his hand. I know you've always wanted to make me proud. His eyes filled with tears. I've failed you, Mama. She squeezed his hand gently. No, you've only delayed becoming the man God created you to be. Her words echoed inside him long after he left the room. Delayed, not destroyed. For the first time in years, Tunde realized something. His future wasn't waiting for motivation. It was waiting for a decision. That night, he took every notebook filled with abandoned plans, every unfinished timetable, every list of excuses, and piled them on the floor. He lit a match. The papers curled into ash. As the flames died out, he whispered to himself, no more tomorrow. I either change now or I lose everything. He had no idea that someone was watching him from across the street. A black SUV sat quietly in the darkness. Inside it, an elderly man observed Tunde with great interest. Then he smiled and said to his driver, he's finally ready. Tunde didn't know it yet, but the next morning, his life was about to change in a way he never imagined. The next morning, Tunde woke up before his alarm. For a few seconds, he lay still, expecting the familiar voice in his head to whisper, sleep a little longer. It never came. Instead, he sat up immediately. The room was silent. Outside, the first call to prayer echoed through the neighborhood. Roosters crowed in the distance, and market women were already arranging their goods by the roadside. Tunde looked at the clock. 4:48 a.m. For the first time in years, he had beaten the morning. He washed his face, put on an old tracksuit, and stepped outside. The streets were almost empty. He began to jog. His legs protested after only a few minutes. His lungs burned. Every part of his body begged him to stop. But every time he slowed down, he remembered his mother's hospital bed. He remembered the receptionist saying, the position has been filled. He remembered every opportunity that had slipped through his fingers because of 5 more minutes of comfort. So he kept running. When he returned home, his phone buzzed. It was Emeka. Guy, where are you? Outside. This early? I've gone for a run. There was silence on the other end. Then Emeka laughed. I almost don't believe you. Neither do I. But I'm done making excuses. Emeka's tone changed. I've been praying to hear those words from you. From that day forward, Tunde built a simple routine. Nothing fancy. Wake up early. Exercise. Read for 1 hour. Practice graphic design. Apply for jobs. Repeat. The first week was torture. By the 3rd day, he wanted to quit. By the 5th day, he almost convinced himself that resting just for today wouldn't matter. But then he remembered how just for today had stolen years of his life. So he kept going. People around him didn't notice the change immediately. His friends still invited him to spend hours gossiping at the roadside. Tunde, come and join us. He smiled. I'll come later. Instead, he stayed home practicing. Some laughed. Who are you trying to impress? Others mocked him. So now you're acting serious? Months earlier, those comments would have broken his resolve. Now they became fuel. He realized something important. The same people laughing at discipline were often the same people complaining about their lives. He refused to become one of them again. 3 weeks later, while returning from the hospital, Tunde noticed the same black SUV parked near his street. The elderly man stepped out. He was neatly dressed in a simple native outfit, with silver hair and calm eyes that seemed to notice everything. Good evening, young man. Good evening, sir. I've seen you running every morning. Tunde smiled politely. I'm trying to change. The old man nodded. I know. Tunde frowned. You know, I've been watching. That answer made him uncomfortable. The man continued before Tunde could speak. Most people only change after pain becomes greater than pleasure. He paused. I think you've reached that point. Tunde didn't know what to say. The stranger stretched out his hand. My name is Chief Bamadiel. They shook hands. I'm Tunde. I know. Again, Tunde looked surprised. The old man smiled. I've known your late father for many years. Tun's heart skipped. You knew my father? He was one of the hardest working men I've ever met. Chief Bamadiel's face became thoughtful. He once told me something I'll never forget. If my son ever loses his way, don't give him money. Give him a reason to become the man he's capable of becoming. Tun stood frozen. His father had passed away when he was still young. Hearing those words felt as though his father was speaking through someone else. Chief Bamadiel reached into his leather bag and brought out a plain envelope. Inside was a business card. On the back, only one sentence was written. Be at this address tomorrow by 6 a.m., not 6:01. Tun looked up. What is this? A test. What happens if I pass? The old man smiled. Your life begins. And if I fail? Without changing his expression, Chief Bamadiel replied, Then you're not as ready as you think. He returned to the SUV and drove away, leaving Tun standing alone beneath the fading evening sky. Tun stared at the car for a long time. The address was on the other side of the city. To arrive by 6 a.m., he would have to leave home before dawn. He slipped the card into his pocket and whispered, Not this time. He had no idea that the next morning would be the most important morning of his life, and that one unexpected event on the way that would test whether he had truly changed, or whether the old Tun was still hiding inside him. The room remained silent after Chief Bamadiel finished speaking. 26 young men and women sat upright, each wondering the same thing. Why me? Chief Bamadiel slowly walked across the room, his hands behind his back. I've spent 40 years building businesses. I've hired thousands of people, and I've discovered something. He stopped in front of a young man wearing an expensive designer suit. People think success belongs to the most intelligent. He shook his head. It doesn't. He turned to a lady carrying 2 university degrees. They think success belongs to the most educated. Again, he shook his head. No, finally, his eyes settled on Tun. Success usually belongs to the person who keeps showing up long after everyone else has stopped. Those words settled deep inside Tun's heart. The challenge begins now, Chief Bamadiel announced. There will be no prizes for coming second. At the end of 30 days, one person will become my personal executive trainee. The salary alone is more money than most people here have earned in 5 years. A wave of excitement swept across the room. But the old man raised one finger. Anyone caught cheating, lying, making excuses, or blaming others will leave immediately. No second chances. The first assignment sounded ridiculously simple. You will all report here tomorrow morning. He paused. At exactly, everyone leaned forward. 5 a.m. Several people smiled. That's easy. Chief Bamadiel noticed their expressions. I didn't say before 5. I didn't say after 5. I said exactly 5. If you arrive at 4:45, you fail. If you arrive at 5:01, you fail. The smiles disappeared. After the meeting ended, the contestants introduced themselves. One young man immediately stood out. Tall, well-dressed, confident. My name is Kelvin. He smiled warmly at everyone. I own a small logistics company. People admired him instantly. He spoke smoothly. He cracked jokes. Within minutes, he seemed to be everyone's friend. He eventually walked over to Tun. So you're Tun? Yes. I heard Chief Bamadiel spoke to you outside yesterday. Tun nodded. You're lucky. I guess so. Kelvin smiled again. I think we're any good friends. Tun smiled back. I hope so. Neither of them knew that someone standing near the window had quietly overheard their conversation. That evening, Tun returned home energized. His mother noticed the excitement on his face. I haven't seen you smile like this in years. He sat beside her hospital bed. I've been given a chance, Mama. She placed her hand on his head. I've never stopped believing in you. I stopped believing in myself. She smiled gently. Then borrow my faith until yours becomes stronger. The next morning, Tun left home much earlier than necessary. He remembered the instructions carefully. Exactly 5 a.m. Not before. Not after. He waited outside the state gate, checking his watch repeatedly. At exactly 4 hours, 59 minutes, and 40 seconds, He started walking toward the entrance. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The large clock above the gate changed to 5 a.m. He stepped through. Perfect. Inside, he saw only 9 people. "Where's everyone else?" he asked. One of the security guards smiled but said nothing. Over the next few minutes, contestants kept arriving. Some came at 4:40, some at 4:50, some at 5:02. Chief Bamadil entered exactly at 5:10, carrying a clipboard. He looked around. Out of 26 contestants, only 11 remained. The others had already failed. Gasps filled the room. One young woman protested. "But I came early." Chief Bamadil nodded. "You were instructed to come at exactly 5. I thought earlier was better. Thinking isn't the same as following instructions." Another man complained. The traffic was terrible. Chief Bamadil remained calm. "Traffic is your responsibility to plan for." A third contestant spoke angrily. "This isn't fair." The old man looked at him quietly. "Life isn't fair. It simply rewards preparation." Security politely escorted the 15 eliminated contestants outside. Tunde watched in disbelief. Half the competition had disappeared before the real challenge even began. As everyone settled into their seats, Kelvin leaned toward Tunde and whispered, "Looks like it's getting serious." Tunde nodded. "It is." Kelvin smiled. "I like serious competitions." Across the room, Chief Bamadil noticed a brief conversation. His expression revealed nothing, but inside, he was watching carefully, because he already knew something Tunde didn't. Kelvin hadn't come to win honestly. He had come with a secret plan, and Tunde was the biggest obstacle standing in his way. The atmosphere changed after the first elimination. The smiles disappeared. The contestants finally understood that Chief Bamadil wasn't interested in speeches, certificates, or confidence. He was watching character. Every move mattered. Every decision counted. Every excuse had a consequence. Chief Bamadil placed a small wooden box on the table. Inside were 11 sealed envelopes. Each envelope contains today's assignment. "No one opens theirs until I say so." Everyone picked an envelope. Tunde resisted the urge to peek. A few contestants kept turning theirs over, trying to guess what was inside. Chief Bamadil noticed. He always noticed. "Open them." The sound of paper tearing filled the room. Tunde unfolded his sheet. It contained only one sentence. "Clean the old warehouse behind the estate before noon." He frowned. A warehouse? Was this a mistake? He had expected a business challenge, not manual labor. Several contestants exchanged confused looks. One of them laughed. "I have a master's degree. You expect me to sweep floors?" Another added, "I came here to learn business, not become a cleaner." Chief Bamadil didn't respond. He simply walked away. The warehouse was enormous. Dust covered every corner. Broken shelves lined the walls. Spider webs hung from the ceiling. Some contestants complained before they even started. "This is degrading. My parents didn't send me to school for this. I'm leaving." Within 30 minutes, 3 people had quit. Chief Bamadil didn't try to stop them. He simply crossed their names off his list. Tunde picked up a broom. He remembered something his late father used to say: "If a job is worth doing, it's worth doing well." So he swept, he scrubbed, he carried heavy boxes. By mid-morning, sweat soaked through his shirt. His arms ached. His back burned. But he refused to complain. Kelvin walked over carrying 2 bottles of water. "You've been working nonstop." Tunde smiled gratefully. "Thank you." Kelvin handed him one. "You deserve a break." Tunde reached for the bottle. Then he paused. Something felt strange. Not about the water, about the timing. Kelvin had barely done any work himself. Yet suddenly he was acting unusually generous. Tunde smiled politely. "I'll drink later." Kelvin insisted. "No, drink now. You need it." Before Tunde could respond, another contestant called Kelvin from across the warehouse. He shrugged. "Suit yourself." Then he walked away. An hour later, Tunde finally opened the bottle. Just as he was about to drink, one of the estate gardeners rushed toward him. "Please don't." Tunde froze. "What happened?" The gardener pointed toward the bottle. "I saw someone pour something into it this morning." Tun's heart skipped. What? I don't know what it was, but I saw him looking around before he opened your bottle. Tun slowly lowered the bottle. His hands began to tremble. He looked across the warehouse. Kelvin was laughing with two other contestants as though nothing had happened. That evening, Chief Bamadiel called everyone into the conference room. Without saying a word, he placed the unopened bottle on the table. I have a question. Silence. Whose bottle is this? Tund raised his hand. It's mine, sir. Chief Bamadiel nodded. Good. He turned toward the group. Now, who tampered with it? The room became so quiet that everyone could hear the ticking clock on the wall. No one spoke. Chief Bamadiel sighed. I'll ask one final time. Still, silence. Then, a voice came from the back. It was Kelvin. Every head turned. Kelvin's confident smile disappeared for the first time. His face turned pale. The contestant who had spoken pointed directly at him. I saw him open the bottle before we entered the warehouse. Kelvin immediately protested. He's lying. Chief Bamadiel raised his hand. No arguments. He looked toward the security cameras mounted in the warehouse. I never said the warehouse was unmonitored. Kelvin's eyes widened. The old man nodded to one of his assistants. Play the footage. The television screen flickered to life. Everyone watched in stunned silence. There was Kelvin, looking around carefully, opening Tun's bottle, pouring a white powder into it, then closing it as if nothing had happened. A gasp spread across the room. Tun couldn't believe what he was seeing. The powder turned out to be a harmless but powerful laxative, enough to keep someone in the restroom all day and ruin the challenge. Chief Bamadiel switched off the screen. He looked at Kelvin with deep disappointment. You weren't trying to improve yourself. You were trying to destroy someone else. Kelvin lowered his head. Without another word, security officers escorted him out of the state. As the doors closed behind him, Chief Bamadiel faced the remaining contestants. There is a lesson here. When you cannot beat disciplined people with hard work, jealousy will tempt you to pull them down. He looked directly at Tund. Never allow another person's hatred to distract you from your purpose. Tund nodded quietly. For the first time in years, he realized something profound. His greatest battle was no longer against laziness. Now that he had begun to change, he would also have overcome envy, temptation, and people who feared seeing him succeed. And the hardest test of all was still waiting. The next morning, there were only 7 contestants left. The mansion felt quieter. The empty seats were a constant reminder that every mistake had a price. Chief Bamadiel walked into the room carrying a plain brown envelope. He placed it on the table without saying a word. Then he looked at each contestant. Today, I won't test your intelligence. I won't test your strength. I'll test something far more valuable. He slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a thick bundle of cash. The room immediately became tense. Some contestants couldn't take their eyes off it. There's 5 million Nigerian nairas here. Chief Bamadiel said calmly, you will each receive a backpack. You will deliver it to different addresses across the city. No security. No supervisors. No cameras following you. When you return this evening, I will know whether you deserve to remain. A few contestants exchanged puzzled looks. How will he know? That was exactly what Chief Bamadiel wanted them to think. Tun received his backpack and the address. It was in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. He boarded a bus and arrived just before noon. The house was small but neat. An elderly widow answered the door. You must be from Chief Bamadiel. Yes, Ma. She smiled warmly. I've been expecting you. Tun handed her the backpack. She invited him inside for water while she checked its contents. Moments later, she returned with a worried expression. My son, there is an extra envelope inside. Tun frowned. Extra envelope? She handed it to him. Inside was 500,000 Nigerian nairas. His heart skipped. He quickly checked the instructions again. There was no mention of the extra money. For a brief moment, a dangerous thought entered his mind. Nobody knows this money is here. Mama's surgery. This could solve everything. His hands tightened around the envelope. He remembered the hospital. He remembered the unpaid bills. He remembered his mother's tired smile. The temptation was real, very real. Then another memory surfaced. Don't give him money. Give him a reason to become the man he's capable of becoming. His late father's words echoed in his mind. Tunde took a deep breath. This doesn't belong to me. He returned the envelope to the widow. Please call Chief Bamidil. An hour later, Chief Bamidil himself arrived. He looked at the unopened envelope, then at Tunde. Did you count it? No, sir. Did you consider keeping it? Tunde hesitated. He could have lied. Instead, he answered honestly. Yes. I thought about my mother's surgery. I was tempted. The old man smiled, not because Tunde had been tempted, but because he had told the truth. Do you know why I respect that answer? Tunde shook his head. Because honest people admit temptation. Dishonest people pretend they never had it. Back at the estate that evening, the remaining contestants gathered once more. Chief Bamidil stood before them with a clipboard. Today, 3 people failed. A murmur spread through the room. One contestant had secretly removed part of the money, believing no one would notice. Another had delivered the wrong package because he never bothered to read the instructions carefully. The third had lied about arriving on time after getting lost. All 3 were dismissed immediately. Only 4 contestants remained. Chief Bamidil looked at them with quiet pride. You've all proven that discipline can be learned. But tomorrow, his expression became serious. You will discover whether you have courage. He paused, letting the silence settle. Because discipline without courage often stops at the first obstacle. Then he looked directly at Tunde. There is something about your father that I've never told you. Tunde's heart began to pound. Chief Bamidil reached into his briefcase and pulled out an old, worn notebook. Its cover was faded. Across the front, in familiar handwriting, were the words, "For my son." Tunde's breath caught in his throat. It was his father's handwriting. The notebook he had never known existed. Chief Bamidil held it tightly. I promised your father I would only give this to you. When you finally became ready, the room fell silent. Tunde slowly reached out with trembling hands. He had waited his whole life to hear from his father again. What was written inside that notebook would change everything he believed about success, failure, and the true meaning of hard work. Tunde held the notebook with trembling hands. For a long moment, he couldn't open it. It felt as though his father was standing right in front of him. The room was silent. Even the other contestants watched without speaking. Chief Bamidil nodded gently. Go on. With a deep breath, Tunde opened the first page. There was a handwritten message. My dear son, if you're reading this, it means I am no longer there to guide you. I don't know how old you'll be when this notebook reaches you. But I know one thing. Life will try to convince you that success belongs to lucky people. Don't believe it. Luck may open a door. Only discipline keeps you inside. Tears rolled down Tunde's cheeks. He turned to the next page. People will admire successful men. Few will admire the mornings they woke up while everyone else slept. People celebrate the harvest. Almost nobody celebrates the planting. Another page. Whenever you feel like quitting, remember this. Your future children are depending on decisions you haven't made yet. Your wife is praying for a husband she hasn't met. Your mother is waiting for a son who refuses to give up. Don't disappoint people you've never even seen. By now, Tunde was crying openly. The notebook wasn't filled with business secrets. It wasn't full of investment advice. It was filled with wisdom. Simple, timeless, powerful. Chief Bamidil smiled quietly. Your father wrote something every night for almost 3 years. He wanted to give it to you himself. But he became ill before he had the chance. Tunde closed the notebook and pressed it against his chest. For the first time since his father's death, he didn't feel alone. The following morning, the 4 remaining contestants assembled in the training hall. Chief Bamidil stood before them. Today's challenge is unlike any you faced. He handed each person a small envelope. Inside was a single key. No instructions? One contestant asked. Chief Bamidil smiled. There are instructions. You simply haven't earned them yet. He pointed toward 4 identical doors at the end of the hall. Choose one. The contestants looked confused. What happens if we choose the wrong one? Another asked. Chief Bamadil shrugged. Then you live with the consequences. The room became tense. 3 contestants rushed toward different doors, each convinced they had chosen correctly. Tun remained where he was. He remembered something his father had written just the night before. Never confuse speed with wisdom. Instead of rushing, he examined the keys carefully. 3 had fresh scratches. 1 looked almost new. He walked slowly to the doors. Then he noticed something else. Tiny marks near the 4th lock. As though it had been used more often, he inserted his key. It turned smoothly. The other 3 contestants struggled. Their keys wouldn't fit. Chief Bamadil smiled. What made you choose that door? Tun answered honestly. I stopped assuming. I started observing. The old man nodded with satisfaction. Exactly. The world rewards action, but it rewards thoughtful action even more. Behind the door was a small office. On the desk sat a sealed envelope. Inside was a letter. It read, Congratulations. You have just learned the difference between being busy and being intentional. That evening, Chief Bamadil gathered the remaining contestants for what he called the final announcement. Everyone's heart raced. He looked around the room. Tomorrow, only one of you will become my executive trainee. The others lowered their heads. Months of hard work had led to this moment. Then Chief Bamadil added something nobody expected. But before I choose, each of you will be given the chance to walk away. The contestants looked at each other in confusion. Walk away? Why would anyone quit now? Chief Bamadil's eyes rested on Tund. Because the greatest opportunities in life always demand the greatest sacrifices. No one slept well that night. They all wondered the same question. What sacrifice could possibly be worth giving up the opportunity they had fought so hard to earn? And for Tund, the answer would break his heart. That night, sleep refused to visit Tund. He sat by the window of the small guest room, his father's notebook resting on his lap. Outside, the estate was quiet. Inside his mind, a storm raged. Tomorrow could change his life forever. Tomorrow could also change his mother's life. He whispered a prayer. Father, if you can hear me, I hope I'm making you proud. At exactly 7 a.m., the 4 finalists gathered in the conference hall. Chief Bamadil entered carrying for sealed envelopes. He placed one in front of each contestant. Open them. Tun tore his envelope open. Inside was a check. His eyes widened. It was for 10 million Nigerian nairas. He looked up in disbelief. What is this, sir? Chief Bamadil folded his hands. A choice. If you take that check, you leave today. No interview. No questions. No obligations. The money is yours. The room fell silent. 10 million naira for 3 of the contestants. It was more money than they had ever imagined owning. One young man stood immediately. I'll take it. He smiled confidently. Money is why I came here. Chief Bamadil nodded. There is no shame in your decision. The young man picked up the check, thanked everyone, and walked away. 3 contestants remained. Chief Bamadil looked at them. Those who stay are not guaranteed success. You'll work longer hours than you've ever worked. You'll be criticized. You'll fail. You'll start again. There will be days you'll question whether it's worth it. He paused. But if you endure, you'll become the kind of person money can trust. Those words struck Tun deeply. The kind of person money can trust. He looked at the check again. 10 million would pay for his mother's surgery immediately. It would clear every debt. It would change everything for now. But what would happen after the money finished? He remembered another sentence from his father's notebook. Never exchange your future for temporary comfort. Slowly, he placed the check back on the table. I'll stay. Chief Bamadil smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. The second contestant also chose to stay. The third quietly picked up the check and left. Now, only 2 remained. Chief Bamadil stood and walked toward a large window overlooking the gardens. Without turning around, he spoke. When your father and I were young, we were business partners. Tun's eyes widened. We had nothing. There were days we shared one meal. There were nights we slept inside our office because we couldn't afford transport home. He smiled faintly. But your father had one habit I'll never forget. No matter how tired he was, he always arrived before everyone else. One day I asked him why. He answered, because success has never visited a man who keeps it waiting. The room became quiet. I built companies. Your father built people. Chief Bamadil turned to face Tunde. Everything I've taught you, I first learned from him. Tunde lowered his head as tears filled his eyes. For years, he had believed his father left him with nothing. Now he realized his father had left him the greatest inheritance of all, character. Chief Bamadil took one final envelope from his briefcase. This contains my decision. He looked at both finalists. You have both worked hard. You've both shown discipline. But leadership is more than discipline. It is influence. He opened the envelope slowly. The silence was unbearable. Then he smiled. Tunde, welcome to the family. For a moment, Tunde couldn't breathe. The room erupted in applause. He covered his face with both hands. The young man who once slept through opportunities, who always said tomorrow, who blamed everyone except himself, had become Chief Bamadil's executive trainee. As he walked forward, Chief Bamadil embraced him. Then he whispered something only Tunde could hear. This isn't your reward. It's your responsibility. Tunde nodded. He finally understood. Success wasn't a destination. It was a daily decision. And the Real journey was only just beginning. Dreams don't die because they're impossible. They die because they're postponed. Every time you say, I'll start tomorrow, tomorrow quietly steals a life you could have lived. Start today, because success never waits for those who keep it waiting. And if you want more story like this, don't forget to subscribe and turn your notifications on so that you won't miss the next story. And feel free to drop a comment and like. See you in the next video.